have Dr. Grace Martin Hall, who is going to explain to us some concepts that she teaches in performance management. So for module 1, we just want to start with understanding what is the concept performance management all about, and then we want to know why that is important for an HR person to understand.
Okay. Good day. It's good to be here. Performance management is a very, very important concept, and I think it's one that is not readily understood because of the fact that there have been many similar systems, but none really as complete as performance management. When we speak about performance management, we speak about a process of continuously identifying and measuring the performance of individuals in an organization. It's very, very important that we pay attention to it because it is also the only known way to date of aligning individuals' contribution towards an organization's strategic goals and objectives. So it's important that we understand that it is a continuous process and it's not a one-time affair. So when we say continuous, it means that the supervisor or the manager has to pay attention to those that they're supervising throughout the year by giving them feedback and coaching and mentoring. And when we speak about alignment, we speak about the fact that a goal-setting process must be in place. In other words, the organization, if you have a real performance management system, sets goals and objectives for the employees, and they understand clearly what's expected of them, so that the performance of these individuals is really aligned with the strategic directions of the organization.
Okay. All right, so continuous. But all right, we have these one-off meetings at the end of the year with our employers. But what you're saying is that they should have been doing feedback throughout the year, even if not written down formally in a document to go to HR.
Yes, yes. Coaching and mentoring is very, very important. In other words, you can't have a team, and you can't call your department a team if you have not really developed any relationship with them, if you have not provided them with feedback, if you have not coached them. How do you expect those employees to know what they're doing, how they're doing it, how it should be done, you know, and even correcting work that may not be up to standard if you have no relationship with them? So that relationship should come in the form of giving continuous feedback and mentoring them. You know, especially in the case of a new employee, you know, somebody new comes into the organization. You can't just take them and set them down and say, well, okay, this is the department and these are the projects or whatever. They should be able to relate to someone so that they can settle in to the job and understand what the expectations are.
So despite the name management in the concept performance management, it's really a developmental tool, because I know a lot of people are afraid of that time of the year. They feel that it is sort of punitive, negative, something to give them an increment or keep them from an increment. It's not really for their development. They don't see it that way.
Okay, let's break this down a little bit, because you have really asked two questions in one there.
Okay.
Because we also have some very specific purposes that the performance management system serves. But let us start with first looking at what you're describing as the annual appraisal.
Okay.
Now, the annual performance appraisal system is only one element of the performance management system.
For some people, that is all, though.
Well, this is it, and this is why it is so important for us now to try and get organizations to understand that performance management is a continuous process and it's a system.
Yes.
So technically, performance appraisal process or system as some call it is only one concept or one element within the whole system.
Okay.
And it's really the element that becomes like the reporting element, because what is supposed to happen at that time is that the employee is supposed to be given feedback on their performance based on the goals and objectives that were set. Now, gone are the days when we only do an annual appraisal, because that is what used to happen. We used to have these great checklists, and you go in and you check off and whatever, and it's used sometimes to decide how you reward the employee at the end of the year. But the employee was never given an opportunity to correct or, you know, do any remedial work. So now we recommend that it's also placed as a cycle, meaning there's a mid-year appraisal and an end-of-year appraisal. And it's the output from these appraisals now that should be used objectively in making the various decisions. So to put it in a nutshell, we say it's a system because it's continuous and it has several concepts. It has the concept of goal setting, concept of coaching, mentoring, the concept of evaluation. So it's a complete system.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that. That's the distinction between performance appraisal and performance management.
Yes.
Okay. So, what? And you told us about the
Well, the
aims
purposes.
and the goals. Yes.
We need to talk a little more
Okay,
about
a
the
little more about
purposes.
those.
Okay. There are 6 distinct purposes, or we also refer to them as aims, or 6 distinct roles that a proper performance management system serves. And they're very important roles. Okay, firstly, we speak about the strategic purpose. And when we speak about the strategic purpose, we speak about the fact that this is still the only system that is linked to performance in terms of measuring the organization's goals and objectives. So when you sit down and goals and objectives are set for you, there's no other system that's going to allow you, except the evaluation, the appraisal, to know how the individual contributions are being made and where something needs to be corrected, etc. So it serves a very large purpose when we look at an organization's strategic planning process. It's one of the outputs in terms of measuring where performance is taking place. The second purpose is administrative. And when we say administrative, it provides the basis for objective information for a lot of the administrative decisions, such as terminations, layoffs, promotions,
Training
rewards, and most importantly, it's going to dovetail with another purpose in terms of protecting the organization in the event of litigation. So that's a very important process. The third process is what we call the informational process. And in that role or aim, it acts as a communication device, meaning it provides very specific information to employees about what's expected, about, you know, what is to be done and how it is to be done. So it allows the supervisor to communicate very well with the subordinate, as we say, you know, or the team. Because we need to remember too that performance management has not just an individual approach, it has a team approach
I
as
was
well.
about to ask that.
Right? The fourth purpose is developmental. And we say it has a developmental role because the feedback from the evaluation or the appraisal is used to provide input for training, you know, for employee development, for career pathing, you know, all of those types of activities. So it has a big role, you know, developmental role. We say that it also has an organizational maintenance role. And that is important because that is what we really term to be workforce planning.
Okay.
In other words, the information again that we get from the evaluations assist us in making again decisions in terms of, you know, what skills need to be in place, how many persons we need, where are persons, you know, like persons, how many we have are going to retire, how many can be put into succession planning, etc. So it's organizational maintenance role is a critical role when it comes to workforce planning.
It links with staffing and it links with the strategic role as well.
Right, and it also helps us to evaluate the effectiveness of a lot of HR activities. You know, we go back again to assess, for instance, if all the money we're putting into training is, you know, showing outputs, you know, when we look at
return on investment,
and their return on investment, that sort of stuff. Okay, it also helps us to maintain a skills bank.
Okay.
Because when we do the evaluation, we look at, you know, how people are performing, you know, what special skills now somebody is demonstrating, etc. So we pay a lot of attention in today's organizations, at least we should be paying a lot of attention to our talent inventory. And that is where that information, you know, comes from and should be fed into areas like that. And the sixth purpose is really one where we speak about it being documentational. Now, in the old days, you would get ready, for instance, to terminate an employee. But when you look at the file, you can't find even the reasons for the termination. And all of a sudden, in the Jamaican context, we're getting a letter from the labor board, you know, saying that, you know, Joan, whoever she is, or the name, you know, or John has come to us with a complaint. And when the organization is asked to provide background information to the situation or the reasons for termination,
It doesn't exist.
no, Joan's file just has Joan's name on it, and we'll find all the leave forms and sick forms, but no reasons for her performance, etc.
Yes.
So in the case of documentation, it plays a very valuable role because if the system is properly set up, we insist that the documentational aspects of it be properly maintained, so employee records on performance be properly maintained. And of course, it's in today's world, it's very, very important because it helps to protect us in the case of litigation, you know, if we have proper documentation. So those are the 6 main purposes. Now, if you were to single out though and ask me which are the most widely used purposes, I would say it's the first 3. The strategic, the administrative, and the developmental purposes. Now people are paying attention in organizations, you know, really to some of the other purposes. But if you're looking at a lot of the text for a long time, so if you're looking at the text, and most texts, you'll still see maybe only 3 purposes listed. But as the whole area has evolved and organizations have evolved, and we look at what's needed globally to be competitive, and we look at, you know, a whole change in landscape in terms of what's happening, you know, with employees and with organizations and stuff, we have now seen these 3 other purposes take some prominence. But most texts will just have the 3 first purposes: strategic, administrative, and developmental as being the main aims and roles. And I'm sure that the whole area of performance management is still evolving and is going to continue to evolve. There's a lot of talk about whether appraisals really have a role and whether they really have any worth. So there's a lot of debate going on, but what is strange, even though the debate is going on, nobody is getting rid of the system. So as we go further into the modules, there's a lot more to discuss about performance management, and we'll be aiming to to do that,
Right, but one
so that
question-
you get a full picture.
Yeah, but one question though. We're talking about this, and you've said that as it develops, and we're talking about Jamaica here. The government of Jamaica, I know.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Oh yes. Yes.
But there's a PMAS system.
Yes, the government of Jamaica for many, many years tried to implement a performance management system and then gave up. But in the last couple of years, they have realized the importance of it in keeping with a lot of the needs of the International Monetary Fund, a lot of the requirements, and they realize how important it is now to be able to track performance and track projects. So they have reactivated what is called PMAS, which is the Performance Management Appraisal System of the government of Jamaica. And a lot of work is being done within the various bodies and agencies to get people on track in terms of using it.
Okay. And it's widespread. It's not just the government, there are
Well,
private sector.
in the private sector,
They have it as well. But the government is the largest
I
employer.
would say in the medium
Okay.
and large organizations, I think we're seeing a thrust
Okay.
in terms of implementing performance management systems. You know, not just having an appraisal done, but putting in the complete process to ensure that there's an objective approach to it, and that it's properly implemented, and that it's also well aligned to the organization's strategic direction. So in conjunction with strategic planning, most of the organizations now are saying one of the outputs of the strategic planning process is that we make preparations also to implement properly our performance management systems. Had a little role for medium-sized organizations, but we're finding that you know, it's also improving in the medium, but in all the large organizations within the corporate sector, we're finding that the systems are in place.
Okay. All right.
So we look forward to continuing the discussion.
Yes.
You know, so as we go forward, we'll, you know, in our next module, look at the advantages of having a good system and the disadvantages of having systems that are not properly put in place, so that we continue the awareness
Okay.
in terms of what is needed as we develop and design performance systems.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Doc. Looking at performance management. We're with Dr. Grace Martin Hall. So, Dr. Martin Hall, can you tell us what are the advantages of having a performance management system? And an extension, what are the disadvantages of having a poorly implemented performance management system?
Okay. Okay, well, as you know, it's very, very important for us to have a well-designed performance management system. And that is true of any system that you're going to design, because when you do not put enough thought and actions into the development of any system, then you know there are grave repercussions. And of course, in today's world, resources are scarce. So we need to ensure also that we spend our resources well, and that we also become very aware of the repercussions, so that we are not hurtful and we don't find ourselves also on the wrong side of the law, and also that we don't breach the trust. Because you know, when you put in systems that are not well put together, then employees lose faith and trust in the system. So of course, that's money down the drain. Usually have to discard it, and then even if you do that, it's very hard sometimes to come back and implement a revised system or a new system, because the employees have lost faith and trust in the system, and managers too, and supervisors. Okay? So we say to you, take the time to define the system properly. ensure that you have measurements that are objective measurements, and ensure that everybody understands why the system is being put in place. So we stress to managers and we stress to organizations that it's important for them to understand the advantages of having a properly implemented system. So let's talk first about the advantages. Some of the advantages that we know that when employees are clear about what's expected of them, motivation is increased, and that is a big advantage. We know that along with the increase in motivation, their self-esteem is also increased. We know that because the system provides for feedback and coaching, managers and supervisors get a better feeling or more insight into the persons that they're supervising. We also know that we're able to better define the job criteria. Okay? We're also able to put more objective actions into the developmental aspect of performance management when the system is well designed. We've spoken in other modules about how important it is for the administrative actions taken by the organization to be objective. So when the system is well designed, those actions and how you go about doing things, for instance, like terminations, promotions, those are well defined in the system. The organizational goals are made very clear when the system is well designed, because the goal setting process is a big part. It's one of the pillars. We consider it to be one of the pillars of the system. So organizational goals are made clear. Employee competence is also increased, because if you're able to give feedback and coaching and mentoring, and employees also do their self-assessments and they know what is expected of them, we find that the competences are increased, because we also have the developmental aspect and the remedial aspect as well. We can't stress how important the role is in terms of protection from litigation. So again, that goes without saying, a well-implemented system offers great protection from lawsuits, from litigation. And we're able to also differentiate between good and poor performance. In the old days, of course, when the appraisal was just an annual event, there was no record of whether somebody performed well or performed badly, or and everybody got the same reward across the board, etc.
Or you had some halo or horn effect, so that I did well all year and something went wrong in the last 2 weeks and I came up with a bad appraisal.
Subjectivity. So a well-implemented system takes away a lot of the subjectivity. I mean, there'll always be manipulation, but it takes away a lot of the subjectivity, and it forces supervisors to communicate. So the communication aspect within the organization is enhanced, and also organizational change is facilitated. For example, we look at the culture of an organization and we know that we need to do some work, for instance, to improve the culture. We can see clearly what is happening if we use the performance management system to provide us with feedback, and we also use the system to provide feedback to the employees in terms of how culture is to be changed. A good example of that is customer service. Okay, we might have an emphasis on customer service, and the culture of the organization is to be one of customer satisfaction, but it's not happening. So we set a goal in the performance system for each employee to have goals, centered around customer service. So it facilitates organizational change. That's just one example of it. And of course, it also improves the motivation from the aspect of the employee's intention to stay with the organization. If I'm getting feedback on my performance and I'm being allowed to do my career path, and I'm being allowed to improve, I'm being given a chance to improve because I'm getting feedback so I can correct whatever, my intention to stay with the organization is better, so it decreases turnover. So those are just some of the advantages. But when it's not well done, we have disadvantages. We have disadvantages. And some of the same things we mentioned, if we flip them, they become disadvantages. So in a nutshell, if we are not properly equipped when we're putting the system in, we're not designing it properly, we're not training people properly as to how to use it, etc. It's not implemented well, then we have some of these same things flipping the other way. So we have increased turnover, we have lowered self-esteem, lowered motivation, wasted time and money, damaged relationships, because the whole matter of trust comes into play. And if I don't trust my supervisor, then we have a damaged relationship there. We also have situations where there's a use of misleading information, meaning the goals and objectives that are being set are not aligned to the strategic directions of the organization, or we're measuring somebody's performance against something that didn't occur or is not in place. So when the system is not properly implemented, there are no provisions for some of these standards. So that's what's very important, that standards have to be in place, okay? So that we don't use misleading information. Employees get frustrated also when a system is not properly implemented, and they suffer burnout because they become very frustrated, they can't understand what they're doing, why we have these goals or no goals at all, etc. Evaluations are not fair and objective, they're highly subjective. Employees are subjected to bias on the part of the supervisors, so like the horn and halo that you spoke about earlier on. So we have a lot of errors, and those we will actually cover later down in our series, because we want persons to be aware of how these biases also affected. So when it's poorly implemented, we have all this sort of stuff, and it places a lot of unjustified demands on the organization's resources. So in a nutshell, a well-implemented, well-designed, designed and implemented system contributes very, very greatly to an organization's competitive advantage. And it's very important that from the beginning, whether you have a system already or you're going to get a new system, it's very important that we have properly trained persons involved in either reviewing the system, revising the system, or working as part of a team to implement a system. So it's critical at the beginning that we do things right.
You were saying in the previous module, you were talking about the government of Jamaica's implementation of the PMAS system at the insistence of the International Monetary Fund.
It's not really at the insistence of the International Monetary Fund, but remember now, the International Monetary Fund has suggested that Jamaica have targets. Okay? So like, take for instance a project. We got a project, we got money to say put in a new pipeline. They want to be able to see how the pipeline was put in, how the money was spent, is it on target, etc. Now, who is putting in the pipeline? People. So you have to now monitor. There has to be really good project monitoring and project management, and evaluation surely is a part of that project management. You might have people who are paid certain compensation rewards at the end of a project, so you have to be able to evaluate those performances, etc. So they turned now to PMAS as one of the tools to help them now to manage performance and to be able to evaluate people's performance and to account for performance.
Okay, and PMAS is Performance Management Appraisal System, the government.
Right.
Just for persons who may not have seen Module 1.
Performance Management Appraisal System. It's a funny title for the system, because I guess they've tried to weave appraisal in the forefront to say, but I have had to remind some of the agencies that I work with sometimes that appraisal is just one element. You can't get away from the leadership, the mentoring, the coaching, etc. Because those are very important tenets in order for the system to be a well-rounded system.
Okay, and failure to do that, you will end up with some of these disadvantages
Yes,
that we've just spoken.
and a lot of errors, and as I said, the loss of faith and trust in the information that's coming out of the system. People find that it's subjective and it's biased and stuff. So it takes a lot of training and monitoring. You can't just put the system in and not have as part of the system the elements of monitoring as well.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Doc. That's the end of Module 2. We'll speak about Module 3.
So we'll go on to Module 3 and the other modules. It's an exciting time to be looking at performance management, and there's a lot to be gained no matter what size organization you are or what type of organization, whether you're working in the public sector or the private sector, or you're working in another country besides Jamaica. This is a worldwide tool. It's not something that's just local.
Okay. I was actually thinking of asking you that if there was some international. Well, I figured the answer would have been yes. When I was thinking about the International Monetary Fund, I was thinking it would be yes, but I was wondering about the extent to which this is an international thing, an international standard. That if suppose I am a company that is trying to invest in Jamaica, but I have other people outside. Suppose I'm Pepsi or I'm KFC or somebody like that. So I'm not Grace Kennedy being a Jamaican company, but I am somebody else investing in Jamaica. The extent to which there may be even different standards in countries. Do we have anything like that in performance management?
Well, there is not a standard as such, but there's a lot of best practices that have been established in terms of how you design a system, because as we go on into the modules, you're going to find out too that there are different types of systems. We have what we consider to be the results-based system, which a lot of people now speak about things like having a balanced scorecard, which is a tool that has emerged out of Harvard, but really is what was originally just management by objectives. So we have results-based systems, and then we have behavioral systems, where we can't set targets because the workforce might be thousands, but we look at aspects within, say, teams that make it important for the team to function properly and for the organization to function properly. So one of the things that we'll discuss lower down in one of the modules is what are the types of systems, and then there's the combination of both types of systems. So we'll get to that lower down when we start to look at what is measurement really, when we speak about measurement.
Okay, well, thank you for the time, Doc. I'll swing by your office next week and we'll talk about one of the other modules.
Great, it's good to be talking about this.
All right, thanks, Doc.